This is Judge Joe Brown, and we're listening to We All Be News, news-free Dixie for the 21st century.
All right, Judge, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, welcome once again, man, Judge Joe Brown, the Honorable Judge Joe Brown. I just want to talk to you about some things going on in this current news cycle. It's like everything's been going really, really crazy and ham this 2016. So much stuff happened since we last talked about the Memphis Black Lives Matter bridge shutdown, among other things. One of the things that happened, of course, you know, everybody else know about the Baton Rouge shooting of the police officers down in Baton Rouge by a brother named Gavin Long. I just want to get your take on that, because he was a military veteran who was allegedly suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, among other things, and also with the recent rise of police brutality shootings and cases. What's your take on that situation?
Well, it's also similar to the one with the shooter in Dallas who was an Army reservist. See, you're asking people to put themselves in harm's way for the benefit of the country. They get shot at, they see some bad things, they put it on the line. Now, I'm of an older generation, but I do remember that a lot of people who came back from the Nam would say, hey, I didn't have anything against Ho Chi Minh. And I come back here and I look at what they're doing to my people. I'm mad. There have been some changes in the intervening 50-some years. And I imagine that you have some black servicemen who are coming back angry. They may have post-traumatic stress, they may not. But they say, I put it on the line for the country. Now I come back and find that, you know, not only did the young people have to deal with Crips, Bloods, gangster disciples, traveling vice lords, but badge blues, which is a term I've heard used to refer to police as an official gang of sorts, but on the level of the KKK, skinheads, or whatever it may be, Nazi party, and they kill black folk and they're not held accountable. We get told there'll be strict accountability, crack down on this, crack down on that, but the young black people do not see any such crackdown on errant law enforcement. Now, for the most part, I'd say that the average cop is decent human, but there's some who seriously should not be wearing a badge and carrying a gun backed up with the power of the state, because they've got another either psychological agenda or personal agenda. And that's dangerous. So this kind of thing is to be expected. There's also another thing that you see a flavor of, and that's what's going on with the Republican convention and Trump and the Tea Party. There's been a paradigm shift in the landscape brought about by industrial technology and computerization, and a lot of people are confused. What humans did for millennia is no longer enough to ensure that you have a respectable, decent living you can earn for yourself and your family. We need more education to cope with the increased complexities, but this country has been de-emphasizing education and making it entirely too expensive for too many people. Meanwhile, you've got another problem too. Some people just can't take higher education. They just aren't inherently intelligent enough. That's a fact of life. We don't like to talk about it. There are other countries that maximize their resources, like the People's Republic of China, which say you will go as far as you are mentally able to go. And whether you like it or not, that'll be the case. So they maximize their resources when it comes to intellectual power. They have more people, a deeper pool, and they exploit it more. Now, these people who are confused and don't know what to do. They can be black, white, brown, red, yellow. And you see it with the Tea Party types and with the outright hatred that you get displayed at the Republican convention and at Trump rallies. They don't know what to do, so they want to be violent. I suspect there's going to be a white backlash that's going to be ugly. I suspect that black folk, being at least 50 years further removed from segregation and so on and so forth, and with a totally different mindset than it was back in the 60s, 50s, 40s, etc., are going to be not as docile as they once were. There's also this thing with the nastiness that the gangs have spread through the inner cities, and that is almost a suicidal disregard for the value of human life, let alone the life of the person who's gangbanging. Now, that's not going to be a pretty thing. America runs in 100-year main cycles and 50-year minor cycles. 50 years ago, we had the uprisings in the inner cities, the riots, they call them. And 100 years ago, 1916, race riots were spreading all over the country. And to a great extent, those were implemented by whites who were bent out of shape by the paradigm shift from an agricultural, rural world switching over into an industrial, urban world. And I think that's about to happen again. So it could get very ugly. And we have another problem, and that is our representation. It has long been said of America that with our system, we get the representation we deserve. And right now, I think this is probably the sorriest election for president that we've ever had. Well, not ever, but at least since the 40s. Wow. And we've got, in one case, a fascist Benito Mussolini act-alike with a bottle of poison in his hand, and we've got a grinning something or another with a bottle of poison in her purse, and we've got a choice as to who we want to sit down to dinner with or have cooked the meal. So wow. It's kind of not good. Trump is a wild card, and Hillary is a lapdog to the large financial interest and does not mean well for our country. She likes to brag about how at her dinner table when she was growing up, they always talked politics. Well, you have to remember those politics were Republican. Her father worked for the financial industry, and she was a Republican all through college. She supported Barry Goldwater, who first started playing that race card as a serious presidential candidate. She supported Richard Tricky Dick Nixon. I guess she didn't become a Democrat until 1969 by her own admission, but I'd say I guess that's because she was at Yale Law School, ran into Brother Bill Clinton, and she decided to get radicalized, if you can call it that. But she was back there in those days talking about black power advocates, anti-war advocates, et cetera, we all needed to go to jail. So we've got one poor choice. We've got a charlatan and another charlatan. One's male, one's female. One's bombastic and one grins at you. One's incompetent and one is reckless. But we don't pay attention, so perhaps in this election cycle, what you might want to do is exercise a concept from back in the 60s, heighten the contradiction. In other words, put somebody in who rams what's wrong down your face every second, so you'll get the idea something needs to be done, and it needs to start with us. We need to be courageous. Young black lawyers, for example, are the biggest collection of punks I've ever seen for the most part. There are exceptions, but most of them are so used to the idea that all of the problems with America are over that they're deep off into we have to look out for ourselves and we don't owe anything back to the neighborhood. They're cowards. They won't stand up for a fight. They don't back stuff up. And unlike 50 years ago when you had young black lawyers, conscientious young white ones for that matter, that backed up the demonstrators and the protesters with some legal clout, we've got these fools scurrying for the woodwork like roaches when the light comes on. So we've got a bad situation, but we've got things that we have to do. We have violated the yin-yang principle, and we've tried to destroy the concept of masculinity. We've just about decapitated the family. And everybody is into this hedonistic, do what you want to do your thing instead of do what you ought to do or do what you should do. So we've got a real live mess. And one of the solutions that impacts us getting back to our neighborhoods is that this paradigm shift has resulted in a distinct lack of jobs to spread around amongst the people. It's not worldview. It's not this stuff Trump talks about bring jobs back to America. It's something else entirely. But the way they have been working it is to control surplus labor. And labor is a commodity like wheat, corn, or cotton, and what you do is you cut back production, subsidize the producers, store the surplus, maybe find a use for the surplus that you didn't have. Well, instead of having a grain silo, you've got a jail cell. The subsidy is the welfare check, the Section 8 stuff, where you create an environment where for 50 years you've got people breeding to work in that environment, which is what? Doing nothing, being helpless, and getting taken care of. And that takes people out of the labor market, and then the would-be input bangs out, drugs out, drops out, develops inappropriate ideas, attitudes, and lack of education, lack of training, no skills, and they quickly go to the dark side, and they wind up getting a felony conviction, which makes them pretty much unemployable, even if they had a method of becoming employed. And they go to the jail cell, and down there's a $1 trillion hydro growth industry to feed, clothe, shelter, provide communications and oversight of inmates. So it's a nasty solution to a problem that should be addressed by the government. And the United States finds itself in the position of being basically the only industrialized nation that does not have a plan. It throws it to the wind and says, let private enterprise take care of it. Private enterprise is all about self-interest and greed, not altruism. And that does not work. So we've got a real live mess here. And we pay too much attention to Kardashians, housewives of NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, hockey, wrestling, you name it, and we sit on the couch all day long on the weekends and do that nonsense instead of paying attention to what's going on. Our system is, I imagine, unfortunately for the current reality, set up to be run by people who are engaged, educated, sophisticated, and continuously thinking about what's going on vis-a-vis the economy, the environment, the interaction of people, their government, and the environment. So we don't have that. So it's not working. It's too easy, and people have the attitude of they can go to the wall and adjust the thermostat to make it comfortable. Well, it's not like that. Politics, social, business, economics, and finance are like having to go out and chop wood. Go find the stuff, go hunt it, kill it, bring it back in, skin it, prepare it, preserve it.
Mm-hmm.
We just aren't prepared for that now. We don't have that mindset. And what's going on is the United States is about to be supplanted as the world's major power, just like England was after World War II. And its downfall started about 100 years ago at the turn of the 20th century. You had incompetent, arrogant ignoramuses who weren't fit to run anything, who had their positions by dint of wealth, social standing, and class status, which is about the way you have it right now, where 3% of the country controls 95% of the wealth, and 96% of the increase in the wealth goes to 5%. And 78 to 82% of the American population of millionaires did not earn it. They inherited it. So we've got a scheme going on that started in the Reagan administration and has been carried on for 16 years through Bush, Obama, and threatens for 8 more if we get Hillary in, to be one where the well-to-do, financially secure, investment banking, financial magi, they run the country for the benefit of themselves, and the rest of us get broke, they get richer. So it's a very bad thing. 50 years ago, the CEOs of GM, Ford, Chrysler essentially made 4.5 times more than the highest paid line workers. Now they make 400, 500, 600, in some cases 1,200 times more than the highest paid line workers, without considering their bonuses, golden parachutes, and stock options, and they aren't doing too good a job.
Mm-hmm.
You can see what's going on here, but we sit here and passively deal with it. Now, we talk about peaceful demonstration and orderliness. Yes, that's the way it's supposed to be, but unfortunately, American history is replete with the lessons that being unruly, rowdy, and a bit violent, if not a lot violent, generally tends to be more effective. Now, as a retired judge, I'm supposed to tell everybody to be orderly, peaceful, and obey the law. As a historian, I'd point out to you that that is not what makes things change in this country. Whether it is elevating the status of the worker through union activity 100 years ago, whether it is dealing with what happened to try and oppress us, witnessed by what the Klan did, whether it is what the South did to impose its will on us after Reconstruction, whether it's a little breathing room and daylight that we got in the 60s with the inner city uprising. So, the law says one thing, history says another. It's your conscience and choice to decide where you're going to go, but I would suggest that you become engaged and knowledgeable.
I was thinking about all you saying, so much to take in, because I heard Donald Trump's speech last night. It seems like he was trying to make himself, he tried to make it 68 all over again with the Richard Nixon law and order thing he had going on, despite reports saying that crime has been decreasing, like major crimes have been decreasing for the last 20 years or something. But he's trying to wrap in that fear. That fear is the most powerful drug on the planet, it seems. All that fear. Go ahead, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
See, you're exactly right, Ron. That's exactly what's going on, sir. But you see, that's one of the classic methodologies of control.
Mm-hmm.
It's political science thing. This is supposed to be the land of the free and the home of the brave, but maybe not so brave, because the way to get things your way is to inculcate fear and then say, but Big Brother will protect you and yours. Now, see, when they start talking about crime and law and order, the average blue-collar white starts thinking about putting more Negroes in jail.
Right.
But he talks about blacks need to be better employed and not so many of us going to jail. He's sending that message, but the psychological message when the magic words law and order are spoken raises in the mind of the listener, we need to lock up more colored folks.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's black, Mexican, or whatever it may be. Or these new types of enemies, you know, Islamic peoples. So he's pandering to outright racism, xenophobia, and myopic views of the world. And what he's talking about really has no realistic chance of being implemented. It's just agitating.
The fact that he's a front runner, though, like the fact that they made him the Republican nominee, and one of his strongest arguments is building a wall.
Yeah.
You know, that's crazy. I mean, like white folks' psyche, though, white supremacy psyche. I mean, I think about, you know, you got to have a boogeyman, right? Like Lee Atwater, the Willie Horton thing back in '88.
Yeah,
there's the legal immigrants, the Willie Horton. Are they the Willie Hortons now? The legal immigrants, the killings in the sanctuary city.
He's not the bad one in American history.
Okay.
In the lifetimes of most people my age, the bad one is Saint Ron the Reagan.
Oh, okay.
See, under his administration, the race card got put back into full force and effect. The big wedge got driven between the middle class and the very peak of the upper class. The national debt got doomed to a disaster by borrowing money, trillions of dollars at a time, from the People's Republic to make whole the needs of the government after he cut taxes for the large corporate, well, his administration and in the minimal Congress and Senate cut taxes for the very upper echelon of corporate America and rich folks. He set in place the destruction of the health care network. He set in place, or at least his administration did, because I suspect he was damn near brain dead, and destroyed the public education system, the health system, the insurance system where it was under control, set free high finance from the constraints of long-term capital gains and effective taxation, set free the rich to continuously accumulate wealth without responsibility by basically destroying the structure that they once had on estate taxation, death taxes, and distribution, and restraints on trust funds and stuff. So most of what's wrong to the country, with the country right now, you can attribute to the Reagan administration, but he's been made out to be a saint because he made them feel good even though they were broke. So I would say, in terms of if you have to characterize presidents as devils or evil, number one would be Ronald Reagan, and then tied for second place would be probably George W. Wacko and Barack Obama. Barack Obama's most dangerous because even though he looks like us, his background is the exact opposite. He's a little rich boy. He grew up the adopted son of one of the richest men on the planet Earth, an oil tycoon and baron from Indonesia. His education bespeaks that. He didn't get to mainland America until he was almost 30-something, late 20s. And he has been an undercover perpetrator of the same things that the Bushes perpetrated and Reagan did. So we have not had help. We have a thing right now where Obama and Michelle worked for a law firm that represented Goldman Sachs, Obama's stepfather dealt with Goldman Sachs as his main American financier. Obama appointed Geithner, who came up with that bundled mortgage fiasco, and was chief consultant for Goldman Sachs and Smith Barney. He put him in as Treasury Secretary. The last two people confirmed to the U.S. Supreme Court have been consultants or worked for firms that represented Goldman Sachs. This last person he nominated for the Supreme Court is a conservative white Republican who worked for a firm that represented Goldman Sachs. Crazy Cruz's wife was a Goldman Sachs executive, and Goldman Sachs set up Hillary Clinton getting $16 million in her pocket in 1 year for speaking engagements, which is legal bribery these days. So, you know, what are you talking about? They get to do the financing, but basically on paper, since thanks to Geithner and some scheme he put in place for them, they don't have to have actual money to back up their accounts. We are supposed to back them up as taxpayers, and they are the reason we have that phrase, too big to fail. So it's a disgraceful situation based on ignorance and floundering and the destruction of the public school system. America got great, black, white, brown, red, yellow, because of its public school system. It got where it is because of that, and the influx of German Jews before World War II that Hitler ran out of the country, and after World War II by the influx of Nazi scientists. We got the technology down. We ran everything. We ruled the world. Now our turn is gone because we don't back up the education, and we essentially destroyed our public education system. So we are in a mess. And if I were a young person and smart and I were good at foreign languages, I would certainly study Mandarin Chinese, Japanese, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a mess, brother.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. You speak of Reagan, Ronald Wilson Reagan, and I was thinking about Lee Atwater. I'm just thinking about Reagan and all this stuff. I mean, it's a Southern strategy on steroids right now, and they're throwing the red meat to white supremacists and white people's fears. And you know, Reagan, he announced his Republican nomination back in 1980 at Neshoba County Fair down in Philadelphia, Mississippi. I mean, when those three civil rights workers got killed. I mean, like state rights is code word for, like you said, like a lot of things. Law and order is code word for locking up black folks or discriminating against black people. Yeah. And what does it say about the country that they crave Reagan, a Reagan-like candidate?
What does it say about the country that they crave Ronald Reagan, and so many of them went broke under his leadership, or at least his administration? I mean, see, they were broke. You're too young to remember that. I mean, it's like 1980, I was making about $80,000 after taxes.
Wow, that's pretty good.
81, same. That was pretty good. Reagan got in, and all my clients went broke. I didn't even make 25 gross, 1981 and 82, thanks to the Reaganomics. You know. See, everybody was growing broke. They were staying in brother-in-law's trailer, lost their savings accounts, lost all of their credits. These white folks lost their investments, but they love it. See, because he made them feel good.
Wow.
He started talking about what's wrong with America and what could make it right. It's just like Donald Trump, but on steroids. The country has got a screwed up financial situation now, thanks to the Reagan administration. But they look at him as a saint, and it amazes me that how anybody can idolize somebody who so badly shafted them.
Right.
Or at least the administration. Now, quite frankly, he was an actor. I don't think we were dealing with a real live person or ego We were dealing with somebody who read a script. And Hollywood scriptwriters can make any kind of character. They could take James Cagney, make him a priest, a gangster, a war hero, or a jet pilot.
That's true.
You know, and the public would eat it up and buy it. So they could make Ronald Reagan the great savior of the country when actually he was a cad and a scoundrel who was fronting off for a lot of people that are ripping the country off. But they love him because they like their movie stars. Look at Arnold Schwarzenegger. Came out of nowhere.
Right.
He was an action-adventure hero. And then they make him into one of the great California governors. Now, frankly, I'll have to give him his particulars. I did not know this until late in his administration, but he actually wrote 6 economic textbooks. At least he had a grasp of the subject. I mean, they weren't books, they were textbooks.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, the one who came, you pronounced his own state he was repping. So he wrote 6 textbooks about economics. Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, it's surprising, but there's no telling what you can get out of something, but they don't really look at somebody for what they are about. They want charisma. The news media does not have reporters in it anymore. They have people who know how to put their makeup on and read the news that everybody's got off of the same little 3 lines coming across a news service that quite often are manipulated by local interests who just simply throw something out. I found that out when I got back here after having some national acclaim and found out how the little petty small minds that have been trying to keep Memphis a white plantation fief for their benefit decided that they were going to go after me, and they go after other people, and then I learned something else about this political game. Nowadays, with all of this money being spent on advertisements, it's not the ads. It's the ad is a bribe to the broadcast station not to badmouth you. So if you give a big ad to your local stations, then they badmouth the opponent. If he comes up and matches the ad, then they get neutral. Then if that person comes back and gives more, then they badmouth him and put negative articles in. And see, what's going on currently is for the last year or plus, the media, CNN, Fox, everybody has been trying to engineer a showdown between Hillary, the sailboat Clinton, and Donald Benito Trump. And by the way, on the military channels last month, they were playing things on dictators, A.L.L, Benito, Mussolini, and Joe Stalin. And if you watch Trump, he throws his head back, looks down his nose, hands on hips, just like Benito Mussolini.
I looked at him last night. He had that strong profile, like a Mussolini almost. And he was doing them hand gestures last night. I mean,
Yeah. So here we go again. See, and there is a thing called political science, which is like medicine.
Right.
A plus B equals C, and there are predictable results. So there are things that have been long-term truths about political science, about how to get something done, how to bamboozle somebody, how to get what you want. And here we have somebody using it. And then we've got Hiller Boat. I call her Hiller Boat, the sailboat. She only goes which way the wind is blowing. And we've got a mess. So I'd say, wow, we whoopee. You know, this is looking like the country is about to get run by the product of something that's generating ratings for broadcast TV that's been kind of behind the 8 ball. So, I mean, if you want to see what I'm talking about, if you've got cable or DirecTV, look at the guide sometimes. Just go through the guide, and you will see that major channel, let's take OWN for a 48-hour period, might play just 5 different programs and keep running them back to back to back to back over and over again for 2 days. And then taking 4 programs and running them back to back to back for the next 2 days. Or you might find the History Channel takes the same 4 or 5 stories and runs them back to back to back for a whole week. There's a whole lot of media and very little content. And the thought of generating a frenzy over Trump v. Hillary to set off those who want a woman at any cost to run something and those who say there's no way, no how, is just too tempting for them to have resisted working that engine for their benefit at the expense of the American public.
Wow.
So then we've got messes like, okay, we've got the people, and people now have video functions in the ubiquitous cell phone, smartphone. And what used to be stuff that was confined and isolated in the inner cities becomes a matter of widespread knowledge instantly, and people see what they've been talking about. So good colored folk can't be good colored anymore. They have to at least be good Negroes and say, oh, well, we must be responsible, or this is by agitators, or they must be radicalized on the net. Damn the net. That's just part of the bad thing that white folk have had about black people and minorities. Minorities can never come up with an original idea. There must be exceptional but evil agitators who cause them to do things they otherwise would not do. You see, go after the Al-Qaeda leadership, and if you knock them off, everything will be all right. No, it doesn't work that way. White people have a term that they used to say, the graveyards are filled with indispensable people. You know, you knock the old guy out of the way, that just leaves room for the young Turks to take over.
Right.
So what we're looking at is not necessarily the reality. It is a fiction to a great extent generated by the media to bring about profit-making opportunities. So we have to be careful and utilize our own sources. Like right now, it's gone viral, this thing where they shot this black worker who worked in the healthcare industry, and he was trying to persuade an autistic somebody that was under his care to come out of the street instead of sitting in the middle of it playing with a toy truck.
Exactly.
So you can see him on the video laying down on his back with his hands in the air, trying to talk to the police and talk to this autistic person, trying to get them not to shoot him. But they shoot the guy, then you can hear the shooter, who's a cop, saying, in answer to the question, why'd you shoot me? I don't know.
Right.
You know, and then, see, that isn't even the big thing now. They've got one out there where a black educator got jammed up violently. So, I mean, it's sort of like, okay, you talk about strict accountability when it comes to sale of drugs or criminality and everything, and there should be no slack. They should be cracked down on, law and order. Well, how about everybody that's out of order? Instead of we have to close ranks behind one of our own, you're supposed to say, no, we got to ferret it out. We had an example of how that worked here in Memphis when we had Doc Harrington in for almost 5 terms. If some cop got out of line in Memphis and the director didn't do something about it, immediately the director was fired before he got off work that evening. So we had a situation where you saw black residents bringing donuts and coffee out to cops parked at the end of the block on the side of the street.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you saw cops cutting back on writing tickets for equipment violations, knowing the people couldn't afford them, but the city council and the new mayor running around saying, we need the money, crack down on them, so instead of patrolling the streets, they're out there holding roadblocks to write traffic equipment violations. You know, it's all in terms of leadership and direction. And then we've got DA's offices, particularly like the local one in the Memphis Shelby County area. If they're not outright corrupt, they're running a tag team thing with the wrong kind of cops so that whatever they do becomes excusable, or they botch any prosecution and just make it a sham so the people don't feel any confidence in them being protected from lawlessness. You know, you got the Badge Blue gang, you got the Crips, Bloods, Gangster Disciples, the KKK. You know, so Badge Blue is becoming the new gang thing. It's just backed up by government.
Well, let me ask you this. I saw the speech that Sheriff David Clarke from Milwaukee gave at the Republican National Convention, and basically he was declaring war on Black Lives Matter. The way he was talking to a lot of people seemed reckless and put a lot of people's lives in danger on both sides, both blue lives as well as black lives. Yeah. What's your thought about Sheriff David Clarke and his
It was
speech?
rabble-rousing. He ought to be fired or recalled.
Yeah.
And he ought to be jammed up for incitement of riot, trying to incite a riot or insurrection or public disorder. That's a disgrace that somebody that's charged with protecting the public would say something like that. Yes, Black Lives Matter. It's if you've been getting victimized and slaughtered for decades by somebody, you have a right to say, my life matters. Our life matters. You need to stop this. That's like somebody going back to 1944 and talking about, what do you mean Jewish lives matter? All lives matter. Well, hell, if the Gestapo is sending Jews to Auschwitz, you damn straight they've got a right to squawk about Jewish lives matter.
Wow. You know, outside. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Judge. Go ahead.
It's like you are a Native American and Custer's 7th Cavalry is 2 hills over. You got a right to say Indian lives matter. So somebody's out to protect the white ones. That's not the question. It's like Black Lives Matter because they matter just as... See, the real statement is not Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter as much as anybody else's. When black lives have not been treated like they mattered as much as, say, white lives, then you've got a right to say it. And for some clown to get up there and get angry because somebody's pointed out the obvious either makes him a charlatan, a damn fool, a twice damned fool, or somebody with another kind of racist agenda.
Yeah, because it's like you sound like a Bull O'Connor almost in blackface. I was thinking about it. I mean, they're trying to go backwards instead of forward. I've never seen this type of mentality. It's like, are we the fool? Because I know I talked to Bernard Smith. Actually, I saw him a week ago at a restaurant. You know, it was about, I guess we just bump into each other. And he shared with me a headline from the Tri-State Defender, April 6, 1968. You know, this is 2 days after King, and about 9 days after Larry Payne got killed by the Memphis police, after Dr. King's last march in Memphis. And it said that police declare war on blacks. That's what it said.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yes.
And we dealing with the same stuff now.
Down there too. That 8th grade dropout clown, Kenneth Turner, down there, who had no formal training in anything was talking about, I'll have an article he ran said, quote, I'll have the little black bastards back on the bottom where they belong, unquote.
Wow.
That's what he called us. See, that place is still operating well and into what they're doing, and the Justice Department of the United States calls it the most racist, biased, bigoted, prejudiced, and unfair institution they've ever investigated. But see, it's still going on.
What institution is this, Judge? What institution is this?
This is Juvenile Court of Shelby County, Memphis and Shelby County.
Wow.
We have them across the country. There was that one in Pennsylvania where the judges went and got long time because they were locking up black kids to generate money for private enterprise.
Yes.
Same thing in Shelby County. It's privatized. And they've got one particular evil, vile somebody, Harold Horn, who started off 6 months out of law school as a referee, then a magistrate. He's an employee of juvenile court. He's not elected. And the last thing was last week when that man fell out in the courtroom. He refused to take a recess, made the paralegals operate over him. They had to partially disrobe the man, and it's a question of whether he died or he survived. And lawyers were all saying that he didn't call a recess. He said his business was too important for a mere somebody having a seizure. But now they deny that happened and that was a recess. These same black lawyers are saying, oh, he didn't take a recess. Now they're saying we don't want to get involved. See, that's what I was talking about, cowards who are spineless and need to be exposed. See, we have institutions around the country like juvenile court and district attorney's offices who back up as a tag team operation what some of these police who ought not be police are doing. And see, this colored boy lets himself get trotted out the closet so he can become part of, boss, what we's gonna do. They used to have a joke back in the 60s, Tonto and the Lone Ranger. And Tonto is listening as the Lone Ranger says, Tonto, the Indians are coming up. What are we going to do? And Tonto says, boss, what you talking about? We. What you going to do? I'm going to be tired of my people. But see, we've always had Negroes who came out of the woodwork or wherever they may be to back that nonsense up. And if that fool doesn't understand that Black Lives Matter really means Black Lives Matter as much as anybody else, then he's a sorry, pathetic specimen who got used. Maybe he's hoping Trump will win and he'll get an appointment.
The Attorney General, perhaps? I mean, wow, I can't imagine.
He can't be Attorney General, but I don't know. Maybe he's made state head of Homeland Security or something like that, or get a federal position.
I mean, he just, to me, it's like he's almost like another J. Edgar Hoover.
Well, one of those, did you see Django, the D is silent?
Yes, sir.
Remember the part that
the Uncle Stephen or whatever his name was, the Sam Jackson character?
Sam Jackson's character. Yeah, one of those.
So he's like an advisor to the king, so to speak. I remember that scene when Sam Jackson spoke to Leo, Calvin Candy, and told him, hey, man, this is how you're supposed to do it. I mean, it's funny how they use black people. Like, we make the best soldiers and everything. They always use our energy for their evil games.
Well,
and we go along for
it. It's like this. You know, dogs used to be wolves, but look at the difference between dogs and wolves. They train and breed dogs to hunt wolves.
That's some deep stuff right there, Judge. You gotta say that again.
It's like dogs used to be wolves, and now they breed dogs to hunt down their ancestors. So
you got blacks hunting down other black people. So that was really that's deep right there.
Dogs hunting down wild wolves.
But like you said, it's kind of a scary time in terms like they really trying to amp up this race war thing, a divide and conquer concept among us right now. and the elites are winning.
And it's like this: really rich folk benefit from mass confusion, which is what they're trying to generate. So the mass confusion will play out as police, white folk, and black folk are having at it, while it's good for the business of the very rich.
Yeah. I mean, like the dude said, the Gavin Long said, it's about blood. It's blood and money with these people. I mean, I'm paraphrasing. I'm not justifying what he said, but it's like they're trying to make people seem like they're crazy and deranged when you train these folks to think a certain way, to spot the enemy and whatnot. But, you know, it's funny. I think it's so important right now. It's good to have this internet the way it is because there's so much information out there. Like, you can find out more about the background of Barack Obama. Not just take Judge Joe Brown word for it, but go out there and find the information that's out there. It's waiting to be found. And same thing with this guy. I mean, he was able to write these 3 books that he left self-published. He also had a podcast he did. And I saw his mom on Tavis Smalley's show earlier today. But I'm saying that there's always another narrative. There's always another side to the story. And we cannot dismiss a system that create a John Brown or create a Nat Turner. This system is not innocent by any means that create these type of people or characters.
Yeah. You don't really think that the United States of America let a real black man become president in 2008, do you?
No, they won't. They wouldn't let a real black man. No Marcus Garvey type, no.
No. So they got one that they'd been grooming. He looked like us. He was a very rich one who was an exception because he had no American black in him. None. He had some Kenyan black in him, but he had no American ancestors who went through slavery, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, segregation, civil rights, or anything else. I mean, look at it this way. Let's suppose there is a heaven, and somebody died tomorrow and went up to heaven, and some of the black folk already there said, tell us what's going on down on earth. We hear rumors that one of us has become president of the United States, one of our kin. Yeah, that's right. Well, who up here is his ancestor? Yeah, I hate to say it, ain't none of y'all.
Wow. He relates to a lot of presidents, though, for some strange reason.
Yeah,
and they all white.
But look at it this way. Warren Buffett, the billionaire, Dick Cheney, the wacko vice president, and Barack Obama are blood relatives through Barack's white side.
Wow.
Now, just think about that.
That's crazy. Well, they say they have been selected, like you said. You don't elect these type. You ain't gonna let no black man. You select people. These are selected people. They were groomed for the position.
And look at here. If that boy was right for us, the first thing he would have done, his first term, first act, is nominated somebody black for the U.S. Supreme Court to set off that embarrassment, Uncle Clarence Thomas, who hates himself and his people. Now, he didn't. And see, he had an overwhelming majority in the House and the U.S. Senate at the time, and he didn't appoint a brother. The next person wasn't a brother. And he at least could have redeemed himself by nominating a brother on the way out. But he didn't. And by the way, I live in an area they assume is Republican, so I get all these brochures. Guess what?
What?
I get the stuff from the Republicans, and it says, please tell your elected officials that if Donald Trump doesn't get elected, they should immediately confirm Obama's nominee for Supreme Court because he's one of us in reality.
Oh, that's insane. I also want to, before I let you go, I want to thank you so much for doing what you're doing, for being a people's advocate, for real, being a people's judge. I want to just clarify what happened last week. So the incident in juvenile court with the black man needing emergency care, it actually did happen, right? Nobody's refuting that it didn't happen.
It happened.
But they're not.
And the people will tell you off the record that he was laying there. He got told he was faking. The man, Horn, just ran over everybody, that these lawyers that the Justice Department notes are so passive and embarrassingly docile and don't stand up for the people they are appointed to represent. They won't publicly say it. They'll say it privately, but they won't say it publicly.
Well, why the hell are they practicing law then? Why they not, like, what did the Charles Hamilton Houston say? Like, you're a lawyer, you either like a social engineer or a parasite.
Well, there you go. He's up on the status quo. What do these people have in common? Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, Lenin, Fidel Castro, Ho Chi Minh, Mao Zedong. They were all lawyers.
Oh, wow.
But then you got these folk, like you say, you kick butt and make changes, or you are somebody that upholds the status quo. Too many of the Negroes just look at it as a job instead of being part of what W.E.B. Du Bois used to call the talented 10.
Wow. They really want to be. Why do black people like to be comfortable, so comfortable in hell? We talk about heaven all day long, but we like living in hell. Why is that? Like this suffering.
Let's go back to the dog-wolf thing. Wolves have to hunt their own food, take it down, and eat it. Dogs get kibbles and bits. Wag their tail, and it's sitting out there ready for them to eat.
Yes, sir. Wow, this is like, people need to know about this. This is a shame, because like this is the definition of insanity. We keep on doing the same stuff and expecting different results. I mean, we're teaching our children by a bad example. It's like when I had talked to some people in Memphis about what those kids did when they shut down the bridge, and a lot of the older black folks will blame the kids for being. I said, if the older black folks did their job, you can't blame the young people for wanting to stop this madness. They might not have the understanding of what's actually happening, how the system works. But how can you blame the victim for being victimized?
Well, yeah, but let's put the whole phrase in there. Okay. Black Lives Matter. We know that one. What we leave out just as much as everybody else's. See?
Right.
And you know what? See, for somebody black to say something like that, to go off into talking about being unruly and all this other stuff. Hell, the director of police was down there, joined in.
Right.
Keep that in mind. So, they've even got LAPD trying to join in on it. Los Angeles Police Department, for goodness sakes, that used to be the real live Gestapo.
Oh, yeah. Well, Chief Parker and his boys and Daryl Gates.
It was like, hey, man, what you want? You will show your papers. What papers? You will show your papers. Fritz, he does not have these papers. Gott in Himmel. And they take your tail down.
Wow.
See, but for them to say, Black Lives Matter, and then got some clown like this lapdog, hunting dog they had at the Republican convention.
David Clarke, Sheriff David Clarke, yes, sir.
Yeah, the Stephen Fetchit boy. He wants to be initiated in the badge blue, the gang, See, something, that it's just like we have become our own worst enemy. And, white people are not inherently bad. Black people aren't inherently bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to do with the culture that they practice sometimes. And we can all be okay, but it's kind of,
and we're supposed to be bravely seen to being free, not being scared to death and scapegoating somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's a shame. Anyway.
Yes, Joe Brown, I want to thank you so much for spending time with us and educating us. How you doing health-wise? How your health doing?
Man, it is doing all right. I've been watching my diet. The doctor's been working on the medication, experimenting. My numbers are coming down to get where they're supposed to be. And hopefully I haven't done too much damage to myself. Diabetes is a bad thing. There are 84 million of us suffering from it, and likely to be more. It's a disease that impacts South Sea Islanders, Native Americans, Hispanic Americans, and African Americans pretty heavily. It's a type 2 diabetic thing that's genetic in terms of the susceptibility to it. So you have to watch your diet, keep your exercise together, get regular checkups, and take your medication. And then the bad part about it is, hopefully you'll be able to afford to be able to do that.
Yes, sir.
Oh, by the way, right now,
George, you breaking up? You broke up a little bit when you said right now.
Yeah, okay, hold on.
Mm-hmm.
Written into affordable health care. This is important for the seniors. There are provisions that continually escalate what we have to pay as co-pays and for the medical premiums. It went up 34% when affordable health care went into effect. Then it went up 14% in various places in the country this year. And right now, you have to pay basically 2/3 of the cost of your pharmaceutical, your pharmaceuticals. And it's going up to where it's going to be 82% that you have to pay. The premiums won't go down, but you'll have to pay 82% of your pharmaceuticals. So it's going up, and that's written into the bill. There will be another 12% coming around sometime next year. So that we got bamboozled on. Yeah, more people are covered, but everybody's got to pay more, and they're getting fewer services. So the bill that we call Obamacare, was written by senior Republican from the state of Tennessee, Senate Majority Leader, Dr. Bill Frist. He couldn't get it passed. And Dr. Bill Frist's family started Blue Cross Blue Shield and most of these HMOs some years ago.
Yes, sir.
And right now, most of the companies are part of a large umbrella setup that family controls. So affordable health care is supposed to help us out. You might say it does somewhat, but if you look at it in another fashion, what you're looking at is something that was written for the benefit of the medical insurance business. With that last thing, I just need to be quiet, I guess, and recuperate for the day. But you asked me, so I couldn't help.
Oh, no, it's fine. I appreciate it. people need to know this information so they can search for themselves. There's no excuse not to know. You know, if you got all this information available just at your fingertips. I want to thank you, Judge, once again for spending your invaluable time with us, dropping your invaluable knowledge. People are very impressed with how well-read and informed you are. And it's very inspiring to a lot of people out there. I just want you to know that. I receive phone calls and texts and whatnot and comments from people really inspired by what you have to say and by you being the man that you are. You really are standing on your word. Stand on your square. So we want to thank you in the words of Great Duke Ellington. We love you madly. Keep on producing and pushing.
All right, brother. Keep on getting the word out.
Yes, sir. God bless.
Thank you.